Well, I think it is just after 10 o'clock. So for those who are already on and viewing, welcome. For folks who are watching this later, the recorded session, also welcome to you. We are really excited over the next between about 40 minutes and an hour to be talking all about owls. We're going to dive in, kind of learn about their life history. We're going to get hands-on and actually get to dissect some owl pellets. And hopefully what we can walk away with today is just a better understanding for these really amazing group of birds, and also think a little bit about how we can help these birds that really do need our help. Because these are wild creatures that, in some ways, some owls are increasing population, others are decreasing. So it's a good thing as we learn to also think about our responsibility to kind of share the planet that we all live on together. So for our workshop, before we actually go through and do our introductions, I just wanted to talk a little bit about what it is that we're actually going to be covering during this workshop. So we'll definitely take time to talk about who we are, who these two random people on the screen you're seeing are. And then also we're going to talk about what makes owls unique. We're going to do an ID challenge. You may have noticed that I'm actually joined by some owls over here. These are not alive owls, but they are real owls. These are actually taxidermy owls. So these are owls, we didn't kill them. They were once alive. They passed away of natural causes. So some of them might have gotten sick. Some of them might have just gotten old and passed away. And then we took them to a special person called a taxidermist who stuffed them. And we're going to use them today as teaching tools so you all can learn about how to tell what owl is what. So we'll do that a little later with our ID challenge. And it looks like someone has already found the Q&A, which is awesome because we are going to be talking about how to participate as well. We will jump in and dissect some owl pellets. So that is going to be our really hands-on part. And to review, as we learn all of this stuff, there's going to be a lot of material. We thought a fun way to review would be with some music. So we're going to watch an owl pellet music video to review a lot of the key concepts that we're going to be talking about today. And then finally, again, with that kind of responsibility of as we learn about these creatures, we'll think a little bit about ways that all of us can help owls, little actions that we can take that are going to benefit the owls that live around us. And if all of us are doing that, that's a big benefit to owls all throughout North America. So I am going to actually pass it off. Oh, actually first to talk about how to participate. So this is a little different. If you've been on a lot of Zooms, which I'm assuming many of you have, we're doing a Zoom webinar today. So we aren't actually going to use the chat feature, but you will notice it's probably, depending on how you're joining, it's probably going to be at the bottom of your screen. There's going to be a bar and it's got a Q&A box. So that's going to be our primary way to have folks interact today. So right there in that red circle, you can click that Q&A box. You can type in any question, or I know it says Q&A, you can also leave comments there as well. And that's something that Julie and I can see, and we may just respond to you individually, type an answer. We might stop what we're doing and kind of bring that up to the whole group. So definitely along the way, feel free to use that Q&A. And if we don't get to your question right away, we'll probably periodically be checking in with that Q&A. So feel free to use that Q&A and to practice. If you're viewing live right now, feel free to open up the Q&A. And if you can tell us, how about, you probably all came with a little preconceived notion about owls, and what you feel about owls. So maybe one word. Just drop in the Q&A one word, how you think about owls, a way you would describe them. If you think like they're the coolest birds ever, you could just say cool. If you think they're interesting or curious or mysterious, whatever word you want to drop in, let's just see if you can drop in that Q&A a one-word description of owls.
Okay. So it's like so far we've got good, we've got cool, we've got intriguing, we've got that they have really cute babies, beautiful, all kinds of, I'm noticing mostly positive words, which is great. That's what I like to hear for a webinar.
Awesome. So thank you guys for jumping in, figuring out that Q&A box. The other way we're going to have you participate is every once in a while throughout this webinar, we are going to use a poll. So you won't need to click on anything to make this happen. On the back end, we are going to pop up a question. We'll probably ask you just over the video, but you'll also see it pop up. And these polls we're going to use just to gauge maybe your opinion about something. We might also use them kind of as like a little quiz along the way to see if we can identify owls or notice some key characteristics of them. And then we'll tell you guys how the whole group has sort of responded to see kind of what the group's knowledge is about owls. So polls and Q&A are going to be the two main ways that we're going to have you participate today. And with that, I'm now going to pass it over to Julia, who can introduce herself.
Yeah, hi. So I'm Julia Fregonara, and I work for a project called the Nisqually River Education Project, which is part of the Nisqually River Foundation. And basically what I do for my job is I do all kinds of educational projects throughout the whole Nisqually watershed. And the projects that we do are basically just trying to get people to think about and to love this really cool natural area that we get to call home. So all the way from when the Nisqually River starts at Mount Rainier to where it comes out into the Sound, all along there, we do all kinds of really cool projects, just getting people to think about what plants are around you, what animals are around you, why are these plants and animals really cool? Why should we care about them? So it's really cool for me today to get to talk about some of my favorite creatures, owls, because they can be found pretty much everywhere throughout the Nisqually River watershed. They can be found even in, pretty urban areas. You can still sometimes hear them at night if you're very quiet. They're a really, really cool creature that hopefully all of us will get to see for real at some point in our lives, but all of us today will get to learn a little bit more about. So yeah, I'm really excited to be here.
Now, one of the things I know, I have had the chance many times in the past to go on walks with Julia, and she's a total nature nut. And one of the things I love about her is no matter where you are, she sees nature in everything. So she's always looking for wildlife and different birds. And so I'm guessing, I'm going to put you on the spot here, but I'm guessing you've probably seen one within the last month. Has there been a time, Julia, that you've been working in the watershed recently that you have actually spotted an owl in the wild?
Yeah. So a few weeks ago, I was kind of near Eatonville, near the Pack Forest area. And I was really lucky, and I got to see a barred owl in the middle of the daytime, which is kind of strange. A lot of you may know that, owls aren't usually out in the daytime. And I got really lucky because the owl was sitting on a branch, and he just so happened to kind of ruffle his feathers and spread out his wings a little bit and get cozy. And if he hadn't have done that, I probably never would have seen him because he was very, very well blended in, but he just so happened to move at just the right time. And the movement caught my eye. So I got to see a barred owl right near Eatonville, which was really cool.
That's awesome. Hey, if any of you who are watching, and you're watching live, if you've seen an owl in the wild before, maybe just tell us where it was. Were you in town? Were you in a forest? Was it in your backyard? Was it at a park? Feel free to drop that in the Q&A as well. And then in a few minutes, we might read off some of those if people have seen owls in the wild before. I'll also say that my name is Davy Clark. I work at Billy Frank Jr. Nisqually National Wildlife Refuge. It's a place with a really long name, and it's a place full of wildlife. So owls live there. They're not the only things that live there, but it is lots and lots of birds. And what I love about the place where I work, one, is that anyone is welcome to come there and explore. So there's trails for people to go. There's actually 4 miles of trails where you can come and walk. This picture is actually of the wildlife refuge. You can see those 2 barns because a long time ago, it used to be a farm. But now there's trails and there's wetlands for wildlife, forests, the Nisqually River runs by, the Nisqually Estuary. Maybe some of you have actually been there before. And one of the things that's cool is as you explore those trails, it's really different than a zoo where you might go and say, oh, I want to see this animal. I'm going to go and stop at this enclosure where that's where that animal lives. At the wildlife refuge, all the animals are truly wild. So when you go, no one actually knows where the animals are going to be. We don't bring them there. We don't keep them there. They can come and go as they please. They choose to come to the wildlife refuge because we take care of the habitat. So part of the reason there are owls that live at the wildlife refuge is because they've got great habitat where they can find all of the food they need to survive. So we've had things like nesting great horned owls, little tiny owls called northern pygmy owls, A few years ago, we had snowy owls that came down and spent the whole winter there. And so these are sites that just all of a sudden they show up and surprise people. And if you're lucky enough, if you go walking and you're really good at observing like Julia is, you can actually go out and find some of these creatures. And every single time it's different, depending on the season, the time of day, the weather, just what's going on in nature that particular day. So it's not all just this one panoramic shot though. This is a picture of the trails. This is one of my favorite trails. Maybe you've walked it before. It goes through the forest. This is when I'm looking for great horned owls. I like to look up in the trees at all the branches. There's also the Nisqually Estuary Boardwalk. You can go a whole mile walking out over Puget Sound. And when we talk about Puget Sound, people think like, oh yeah, there's probably fish, maybe sea stars. But even in places like this estuary, the tide goes out and there are owls that fly over the estuary, like this short-eared owl. This is a picture taken at the Wildlife Refuge right over the estuary just a couple of years ago. And we're gonna talk, there's all kinds of owls, all kinds of habitats and behaviors, and we're really gonna dive in and learn about those today. So to start, we wanna think about what's an owl? And you might see that question and be like, that's a silly question, an owl's a bird. And you're right, but it's a really specific kind of bird. So just to think about what makes owls kind of unique within those groups of birds, we first wanna know that one thing that makes them unique is they're mainly nocturnal. And I think we might actually throw up a question here in one of those polls. Before I jump in and just say what nocturnal means, we kind of want to gauge the audience here. So for those watching live, we're going to toss up a poll and see if you guys know what it means to be nocturnal. And for those watching recorded, you got three options: during the day, asleep at night, awake at dawn and dusk, or awake at night, asleep during the day. Right. We'll give you a second to think about that too.
Yeah, so we'll give it about 5 more seconds and then we'll see what we know here. All right, ending the poll. All right, it looks like most folks say that they think nocturnal means awake at night and asleep during the day. So did we get it right, Davy? What do you think?
They got it 100% right. That is exactly what nocturnal means. And I am going to point out here that we want to say owls are classified as mainly nocturnal. So what you're going to see there is, we'll explore that a little bit more later, but not every owl is nocturnal. So there's actually some differences in owls. Most of them are awake at night, asleep during the day, but not all of them. So owls are also birds of prey. And this means that they hunt other animals for their food. So other groups or other birds that are birds of prey might be like a peregrine falcon or a red-tailed hawk. So you can think of these as birds that are going to be basically the hunting birds. Some people actually call them raptors as well. And there's over 200 of species of owls throughout the world. So it's actually a lot of owls that live all across the world. And they live almost everywhere. They live in cities, they live out in the country, they live in the mountains, they live on every continent except Antarctica. So they are really widespread. They have adaptations that allow them to hunt in all different kinds of places. And owls have exceptional vision and hearing. Almost all of them have both exceptional vision and hearing that allow them to be such effective hunters. And one thing that separates owls from a lot of other birds is they have this really unique facial disc. And we'll kind of take a peek at, oh, how about this owl? And you can see it's got around its eyes, it's almost like a saucer or like a little like satellite dish around the eyes, that it has these really unique feathers that other birds don't actually have. And we'll talk a little bit about kind of why they have those facial discs. But people feel free, if you want to take a guess in the chat, like why would an owl need to have a facial disc? Like those feathers that form that kind of circle around the eyes, feel free to drop that into the Q&A.
And I also, maybe if I can interrupt you really quick, I wanted to share some of the responses to your previous question about seeing an owl in real life. So Sterling from Mrs. Fowler's class wanted to share that once he and his mom were taking a walk at dusk and one flew right over their heads, which I think is the coolest thing ever.
That's awesome, Sterling.
And then Daniel wanted to share, this is a very different type of story, but I think it's really interesting too, that one time there was an owl that flew into his garage. And then later, when his dad came back from work, they were able to get it to fly out again.
I'm so glad you got it out of your garage. I wonder if it like made a mess or anything.
Yeah.
That's wild. Huh.
They're very curious creatures.
Yeah, they're really curious, really smart. And there are, in fact, there's about, it depends, I said 18 up here. It kind of depends on who you ask. There are some that show up in North America every now and again, but there's basically around 18 species of owls found all throughout North America. So these aren't all the ones that we have right in Washington, but a lot of them do come right here to Washington State. So just to see a couple of examples, we'll start by maybe looking at one of the big owls. This one is called a snowy owl. And they show up and they're kind of funny. Like we think of birds migrating every year. The snowy owl will show up every 5 to 15 years. And scientists haven't totally figured out why. They can't quite figure the pattern out. So this is something, if you're interested in birds, if you're interested in science and you think, hey, I like looking at birds, I like spending time outside, big secret I'll let you know, people will pay you to study birds like this and try to solve the mysteries we don't know yet. So that could be someone's future career, figuring out why snowy owls only come every 5 to 15 years. And this one can be like, about a little over 2 feet long. So pretty big owl, but not quite as big as our biggest owl of North America, which is the great gray owl. And this one can be over 3 feet long. So you can imagine a grown adult is oftentimes, like I'm about 6 feet tall. So 2 of these owls would be from the floor all the way to the top of my head. Another way to think about that, since you can't see the floor on my screen, is pretty much this owl would be from the bottom of the screen where you can see me all the way to the top of my head. So really large owl, this great gray owl that you can see here. But not all owls are that big. There's also owls that when they're full grown are only a few inches big. Like here we have this northern saw-whet owl, which is just a little over, I think about 3.5 to 5 inches or so when they're adults. So people will see this one and go, oh, look, it's a baby owl. The baby would be way tinier. And these owls, even though they're small and they're cute, they are ferocious predators. They're just as ferocious as those really big owls. They might be eating different foods, but they're still birds of prey. Another example would be this northern pygmy owl. And this is, again, this is one, maybe you've seen one, maybe you haven't. These live right around us. They're just really easy to not see because they're so small. They've got feathers that help them blend in. But this little tiny northern pygmy owl, when it sits, it likes to sit like in a bush and it'll sit and look out trying to hunt for its prey. But because it's so small, other birds like to hunt it. The northern pygmy owl has a really good solution for that. It's got eyes in the back of its head. And I don't mean real eyes, but in this case, it's actually false eyes that are the coloration of its feathers. So you can see the owl looking forward here. This is the same owl on the right. And these black dots surrounded by white, if a hawk is flying over and thinks like, ooh, I'm gonna go eat that little owl, it might mistake these for eyes and be like, oh, it can see me. It's probably just gonna fly away. So it won't even bother trying. So it's a really unique adaptation that this tiny little owl that lives around us uses in order to survive while it's hunting other things. So just a small sampling of some of the owls that live around us. And we were talking a little bit about that owl hunting. It's important also to think about, if we're learning about these owls, what they eat. So we want to know how they fit into that web of life, right? All things in nature are connected. Energy cycles through systems from the sun, making plants growing, and then maybe bugs eat the plants, other creatures eat the bugs, other creatures eat the creatures that eat the bugs, and so on until we get to owls. And it turns out that owls eat a very wide diet. Certain species might specialize in certain things, like some really small owls almost entirely eat bugs. So they might totally just be looking for dragonflies or other insects or different kinds of invertebrates that they can find. There's also owls. We don't have these in North America, but there are a group of owls that specialize in fishing. So they are all about being able to catch and eat fish. Some owls eat reptiles. Other owls might eat amphibians. Owls do also eat other birds. Let that one sink in because they are a bird, but they eat other birds. And a lot of them eat small mammals. And I think we're really going to get a chance to look at those last two, the small mammals and birds, when we're dissecting owl pellets later on. And I just want to point out, when I say that owls eat birds, that means they also eat other owls. So if we're just being totally clear here, some owls are cannibals. It's true. And as we think about those foods, it's also important to understand their life cycle, their natural history, when they hunt. And I was really pleased to see that so many of you actually knew what it meant to be nocturnal. So we're going to add to that knowledge. So we can think about owls as being these nocturnal creatures, but it turns out only about 70% of owls are truly nocturnal birds. So that 70% of them that are going to be awake during the night, that's when they're active hunting. And the rest of the time, they're going to be roosting, sleeping, all during the daytime. Other owls, about 3% of them, are what we call diurnal. Now, I'm not going to say all humans, because I know some people really like to stay up really late. I'm diurnal. I like to be awake during the daytime, and I go to sleep at night. If anybody else is like that, you're a diurnal creature. Julia, are you diurnal or nocturnal?
I would say most days I'm diurnal, but sometimes, especially on the weekend, staying up late watching TV, sometimes I feel a little more nocturnal.
So you also might be seeing this and being like, wait a second, those are two sides of the coin. Either you're awake during the day or you're awake at night, but that only adds up to 73%. And there's two things that kind of play into this. One is that there's a large group of owls, 22% of them, of all the species of owls, are crepuscular. And that word crepuscular, number one, it's a good word if you want to impress somebody, some adult in your life, says like, what did you learn today? Tell them the word crepuscular, because they're probably not going to know what it means. And it's a great thing in these groups of owls who are awake at dawn or dusk. If you like to nap, this is your thing, crepuscular, because that means you get to sleep during the day and you get to sleep at night, and you just take care of your hunting during dawn and dusk. So we've got some of those crepuscular owls, but that still doesn't add up to 100. I think we're at 95%. And I mentioned before the snowy owl, that there was a mystery that scientists haven't figured out. And this is another one of those mysteries around owls that anyone in the future studying owls could make a whole career of, is that there's about 5% of owl species that people haven't quite figured out. Are they nocturnal? Are they diurnal? Or are they crepuscular? So more research is needed. And this is one of those things for future generations of bird scientists. These are called ornithologists. This is work that they can do. These are discoveries that one of you could go out and make and add to that big body of knowledge that we know about nature, because we're always learning new things. So that's just a little bit about when owls are hunting. And now we're going to take time to kind of get you guys involved with an ID challenge. So when we're thinking about this, Julie and I were talking, we thought it's always good to see an owl and get to learn how to identify it. But so often you actually are just walking and you hear the owl. So we're going to learn how to identify owls both by sight and also by the sounds they make. And we're going to start with this owl. This is that great horned owl. And maybe people have heard this before, if not in real life. Anytime you hear an owl in the movies, it's usually, a lot of times they'll play the sound of the great horned owl. So let's listen, we'll play it once or twice here. It's like that classic hooting sound. We'll do that one more time, just so folks can hear it. So that's going to be our first of 4 owls. Again, we got the great horned owl. The next one has a really different hoot. This owl, you can kind of notice the eyes are a different color, the feathers are a little different. This is called a barred owl. And this one takes a little imagination, but I think it kind of sounds like it's saying, "Who cooks for you? Who cooks for you?" So again, use your imagination here, but let's see if it sounds like that to you. We'll just do that one more time. So that barred owl asking who cooks for you. And this owl doesn't have a mustache. That's actually its prey. It's got a little field mouse in its beak. So the taxidermist wanted to show a little bit about the owl's relationship to its prey. This owl, I'll just say if I was on a walk in the night and it was completely dark out and I heard this owl and I didn't know what it was, I would be terrified. I'd probably be running away as fast as I could because it sounds like it's straight out of a horror movie. The sound I'm going to play for you is quiet, but I promise you, I assure you, in real life, it can be really loud. So the barn owl. We'll just give one more listen to that barn owl. The scientific term for that is screaming. And finally, save my personal favorite for the very end. One of those really small owls. This one is the northern pygmy owl. And we've talked a little bit about how not all the owls are going to be hooting. So you have things like the great horned owl that hooted, the barred owl was hooting, but the barn owl kind of did that scream. This one is super different. They will sit on a branch and they will make the sound I'm about to play easily for 5 hours, 6 hours straight. So they are very persistent and they sound like this. And if you guys think you've ever heard that one before, you could have. So let us know in the Q&A, definitely drop a line if you're like, wait a second, I've totally heard that sound. Like in my mind, it sounds like, I don't know, like a truck backing up or something. Julia, what does it sound like to you?
Yeah, to me, it sounds more like in like movies where there's like a radar detector, right? Like the circles and the line is moving around and the battleship or like the monster is coming closer and it's going beep, beep, beep as it's getting closer and closer. That's exactly what it sounds like to me.
Yeah. So if you're ever camping, if any of you like camping, you're ever camping and you start hearing that sound, oftentimes you'll set up your tent, maybe you're cooking up hot dogs or something, you'll just keep hearing it almost all day. They'll just sit there and make that sound. So those are our 4 owls. Now what we're gonna do is the challenge part of the ID challenge. So in this part, we're gonna use those polls again. We're gonna play a sound. And if you think like, okay, that was kind of easy, I think I got this, here's the challenge. Try to identify the owl before I show you which owl it is. So we're gonna give you the poll where you can actually name the kind of owl it was. See if you can get the answer just from the sound of the owl. We'll start over here. We'll give folks a minute to see if you can get it. What owl was that? If you need a little more help, if you're like, oh, I can't quite remember the call it was making, this was the owl making that sound.
All right, I'll give you another 5 seconds or so. All right, I'm closing the poll and it looks like 80% of people said barred owl.
Oh, you guys are good. Yeah, we started this off. We were like, we're going to trick people with this one. But apparently not. Nice. Good work. Okay, let's see if we can keep the success rolling. The second owl is going to sound like this. Hmm.
Oh
Who's
man.
that owl that you just heard?
Okay. Another 5 seconds or so. I can already tell we're killing it. All right. 91% of voters say great horned owl.
Oh my gosh, you guys are owl experts already. That's crazy.
Oh my
Okay,
gosh. And wait, Davey, I want to interrupt you very quick because
yeah.
Zane says that that owl sounds like those clocks that hoot. And I know exactly what you're talking about, Zane, because I have the same clock. And every day at 12 o'clock, it plays the sound of a great horned owl.
That's awesome.
I love that.
All right, let's see the third one here. In case you need to see the owl for a little reminder.
Okay, another 5 seconds to think about it. All right. And 95% of folks say northern pygmy owl.
That's awesome. Good work. And we're going to do the final one.
Okay. Another 5 seconds or so. And we've got 91% of voters saying barn owl. You guys are really good at this.
Yeah. So people totally got it. So that one was the barn owl, which is, again, it's just got that crazy screaming call that we kind of lowered the volume on, but it can be really, really loud. So excellent job on the ID challenge. We are going to move right along now and really try to get ourselves to that hands-on part where we're going to actually be dissecting owl pellets. So maybe some of you have done this before. We did want to talk a little bit about what an owl pellet is, and we're also going to talk a little bit about what an owl pellet is not. So before we touch it, before we get our hands on that thing, we kind of know what we're actually dealing with. So an owl pellet is pretty unique, and it's sort of an adaptation that owls have that they can form these pellets because of the kinds of food that they eat. So owls, when they're eating a lot of things like small mammals or birds, there's part of the creature that they want as food, right? They're going to turn the meat into calories, into energy for themselves. But there's other parts of the food that they really can't digest. Their stomachs are not set up to digest it. Same way, like if anyone here likes to eat like chicken wings, you usually eat the meat off and then you set the bone aside. But unfortunately, an owl doesn't have these hands with opposable thumbs in order to pick things up. So it's just tearing apart its prey, eating it whole. And the furs, bones, teeth, feathers, insect shells, all that stuff goes down with the good stuff, the meat. So the owl actually separates that stuff out inside of its body. So what happens is really tightly, all these extra parts, the owl forms a really tight pellet inside, sort of inside of its throat. So the good stuff, the meat, goes down to its stomach, and the rest of the stuff stays in its throat. It then spits it up. So important thing to know, owl pellets are not poop. They are not poop at all. They don't come out of that end. They come out of the mouth. They are just all of the extra bits. And one of the great things about this is scientists can actually find these owl pellets and take them apart. And by seeing the bones that are inside, they can actually study basically what it is that's the diet of these particular owls. It helps them to understand the life of the owls by looking inside of the pellet. And today we're all going to be scientists as we basically open up these owl pellets together and try to figure out what it is that's inside of the owls or the owl pellets. So just a quick step-by-step, and then we're going to be diving in to actually dissect some owl pellets. The first thing, anytime we're doing science like this, is we need to know what materials we have. So we are going to have with us an owl pellet. And if you all have owl pellet kits that you got from your teacher that came home with you, you'll probably find just a big Ziploc bag, and inside of it, the owl pellet is going to be wrapped in aluminum foil. So you're welcome to open that up, or maybe you just have an owl pellet packaged differently. You can see on Julia's screen there, she's got the owl pellet, and we can, that's going to be one of our materials. You're also going to have 2 wooden probes, basically 2 wooden sticks. These are going to help us. You can actually, these owl pellets that we have, they're totally clean. They're completely sterilized. So totally safe to touch with your hands. But I know myself, I've got kind of these big fingers and it's awkward for me to open them up that way. So I like to use these wooden probes to kind of tear apart the owl pellet when it's kind of bigger parts of it. And then we'll have some blue forceps. These are also basically just tweezers. And this is going to help us when we find really tiny bones. We'll be able to just pull these bones out using the forceps. Also, there's an owl pellet sorting sheet, which if you have, this can be a great tool for figuring out what bones came from what creature. You can see it pictured on the slide. Julia's got it kind of up close there too. And it'll tell you whether the bone is from the jaw or from the leg. It'll also tell you what kind of creature it came from. But if you don't have that sorting sheet, that's okay. You can also just group your bones by ones that look similar. And then what we'll do is at a certain point, we can pop on the camera like Julia has now, or we'll pull up this slide again where you can actually see the pictures of the different bones. And then some optional materials, which, again, you don't need these to do this dissection, but there's a paper plate. I like to use the paper plate basically just to keep things organized. Sometimes I sort on my sorting sheet. Sometimes I like to sort them on the paper plate. That's just to keep your work area clean. And if you're thinking, okay, hold on, I signed up for this workshop. I didn't know we were going to touch stuff that came out of an owl. Again, it's sterilized, totally clean. But if you want gloves, there's some gloves in your kits as well. So you're welcome to wear gloves while you do this. And something that is not listed on our materials is yours to keep also in your kits is a hand lens. So we're going to have some tools Julie and I are using to show you things up close. You've also got a hand lens. You're welcome to look at those fine details using that hand lens. And then what we're going to be doing to get this started, and feel free if you want to at this point, if you'd like to unwrap your owl pellet and kind of follow the directions here, feel free to, because your first step is to get that owl pellet open, and we're going to put it on the paper, your work area, put it out onto the paper plate, whatever you have to work on your owl pellet, we're just going to kind of plop it right down. And once we get our owl, oh, and don't worry if your aluminum foil gets messy or torn, we're not going to need that later. So feel free, if that tears up a little bit, it's no big deal. And then once we have our owl pellet in front of us, you can do this however you want. The guiding principles of this are you don't want to obliterate your owl pellet, but you do want to break it apart. So I like to use the probes. Sometimes I'll use my hands, and I break the owl pellet up like maybe in half or maybe in quarters. So I try to just break it into enough, like a nice big section, so that when you tear into it, usually when you open it up, you're going to start seeing fur and you're going to see those bones.
So my pellet had kind of a natural little break right through the middle. I like using my fingers because I have kind of shaky hands, but I just kind of got in there and gently, gently tugged until it split into these 2 pieces here.
Awesome.
And I can already see a bunch of tiny little white bones in my pellet.
So once you've got that broken apart, the next thing you're going to be doing, this is the part where we're probably the most careful. But again, if you make a mistake and you break one of the bones, completely fine. So we're going to be carefully tearing the pellet apart into even smaller pieces here. I like to use those blue forceps unless I feel like I have to use something bigger. And at this point, what I'm doing is pulling out tiny bones and setting them aside. If I'm using that sorting mat, go ahead. Otherwise, just group them. And then sometimes on the bigger bones, you're going to have to like tear the fur off. So that's going to be our main way to do this, is just all of us are going to be working our own pace, taking apart these owl pellets, seeing what we can discover inside of them. And then as we go along, Julia and I will probably be checking in on the Q&A. So if you find things that you have questions about, or if you just find something cool and you're like, I can't believe it, I just found like this crazy skull inside of my owl pellet that's totally whole in one piece, let us know. And then we'll be checking in on that Q&A, sharing out with people. So Julia, it looks like you got something there already in your hand.
Yeah, so this was the very first bone that I was able to pull out. It's really thin and really small. And so once I've pulled it out of there, what I like to do is then take a look at my chart and just kind of see which does it look the closest to. So it's definitely not a skull, right? I don't see any fingers or anything like that. So I'm thinking that it's probably a rib. And in terms of shape, to me, it looks closest to this one here, but it's really hard to tell. And, you know, we're not going to be grading or anything like that. So just kind of, I'm going to place it on there. I think right now that it's the rodent rib, but we'll see as I keep pulling out bones. Maybe I'll find other things that will help me make a decision as to whose rib that is. And I actually can see even more. So here's another one. Put that over there as well. And then I'm just going to kind of keep carefully pulling off tufts of hair, and kind of like being an archaeologist, being really careful, pulling out some cool bones. Here's a cool looking one. This one's quite a bit larger than my rib bone.
I'm going to hop in real quick. We got 2 questions. Are the bones safe to touch, and are we allowed to keep the bones? So good news is the bones are safe to touch because these owl pellets have been sterilized. That means they've been totally cleaned basically all the way through. So it's okay to touch them, definitely just to be safe. And it's just a good habit. We're always going to wash our hands afterwards, but it is okay to touch them. Definitely only touch them though. And that way you can move them with your forceps, the little tweezers, or you can just touch them with your hands. And I also have joined, you may see that little light popping up. I have been working on my owl pellet and I have a little microscope. I'm gonna put some of these bones underneath. So you all may be able to see that. We're just gonna zoom in really close on some of these bones so that we can see them in detail. And feel free, if you're following along with me, you can do that. You can also use your hand lens to check out some of these. Like I have this little bone. So found a whole skull. Here's the teeth. Julia, yours has a ton of bones in it.
Yeah, it's so far I have no like really large bones like skulls, but lots of these kind of, I guess I'd say medium-sized bones that I'm gonna guess are some sort of leg or arm bone. The sheet has them all divided by whether it's the front leg or the back leg. I'm not quite knowledgeable enough to know if it's a front leg or a back leg, but they're definitely pretty large. Oh, actually, check this out. So this bone is like a little loop. There's like a hollow part of it. It's like a little teardrop shape. So that tells me, get out my little sheet. I'm gonna guess maybe this is a pelvic bone because it's got that loop. That would be my guess. Or maybe it's like this guy, the mole foreleg. Who knows?
You know, and when I was doing my owl pellet earlier, I ended up like I just grouped them all and I just took my best guess. And then slowly over time, I started realizing like, oh, almost all the bones are rodent. And then I've got these 2 bird bones over here. And it made me like second guess. And I went back and looked at the ones I thought were bird bones. And when I rechecked, I was like, oh, those actually are rodent bones. So definitely feel free to second, you know, you can reevaluate your guess if you're sorting those bones and using the ID chart. Yeah. And I know you guys are working, but definitely if you find a an interesting bone, let us know, or one that you're like, oh, I am really surprised at how many bones were in my pellet. Anything that's surprising or interesting thing to you, feel free to drop those into the Q&A.
So here
oh, Ruby just found a jawbone. Nice work, Ruby.
You and me both, Ruby. I got one too. I love the jawbones and the skulls because they're very, it's very clear what they are. You don't have to be like, oh, is this a leg bone? Is this a piece of a backbone? You know exactly what it is, which is very satisfying for me.
I'm just gonna zoom in. I've got my microscope cam set up here, and it looks, this actually isn't a bone at all, but on my pellet, there is so much fur.
Wow.
And it's just crazy to see all the fur that this owl had to digest, probably just to get a little bit of meat. Or form into its pellet, I should say, to get that meat.
I think I've got a skull in here, but it's hard to tell. My pellet is very dry and crumbly, which is kind of interesting. Usually I have a lot of hair, kind of like Davy's, but this one is crispy. Here we go.
Another thing to think about as everyone is dissecting their owl pellet is try to think about how many creatures are actually represented in your owl pellet. So you can sort of think of this as like, as you're opening up your owl pellet, maybe you're finding lots of bones, but do you think that the bones are all from one animal the owl ate, or is it multiple animals? Because some of those smaller owls maybe might eat a single mouse, and that's pretty much going to be their big meal for the day. And they might form a pellet and then spit it up, and that would just be like one rodent. Whereas a larger owl might eat a couple of different things. So you could get a mixture of bird bones and rodent bones, or maybe 2 different rodents in the same pellet. Because owls will actually make kind of 1 or 2 pellets a day. That's not a hard and fast rule. They could do more, or some days they might not make a pellet at all. But in general, it'll be 1 or 2 a day. And scientists can actually measure the owl pellets, and just from looking at the pellet, kind of like how we learned the owls just from the sound, some people can actually just look at a pellet and know what owl it came from based on the really specific measurements of it.
Hey, David, check this out. Okay, so this is a lower jaw from some sort of rodent. You can see this tooth coming out, but check this out. If I tug on the tooth, I can pull it out of the jaw. That's the whole tooth. This is one giganto tooth. Rodents have teeth that just kind of keep growing and growing and growing. And as they nibble and nibble and nibble, it gets worn down on the outside, so more comes through to replace it. So you can see just how much tooth is hiding inside of the jawbone, right? It was kind of like that.
That is so cool. That reminds me of like our fingernails, like the way they just keep growing and growing and then we have to clip them.
Exactly. Some rodents, if they don't nibble and nibble and nibble, it'll start to hurt them. Like their jaw will, the teeth will keep growing until it's like poking them in the mouth.
Wow.
So they got to keep filing them down and nibbling.
You know, we're going to keep going on these owl pellets. I'm going to let you guys know I'm doing a time check here. And we probably aren't going to actually finish doing our entire owl pellets just during this workshop. We absolutely encourage you after we're done here to keep working on your owl pellet. See if you can, like sometimes if, I don't know, about 20 minutes, maybe 30 minutes, you can go through the entire owl pellet and pull every single bone and try to sort it, match them up to get them all kind of figured out exactly what creature was in there. Whoa, Sterling found a skull that was complete with the nose and the jaw, which I think is kind of unusual.
Yeah, I usually find just the top or just the bottom, but not usually both. Wow.
Good job, Sterling, too, because I think if I had found that, I probably would have accidentally broken it before I actually uncovered it. So good job. It sounds like Sterling's being like super good, careful while dissecting that. So excellent work.
Yeah, I think this was a skull. I think I got a little carried away, and I think I might have taken out the back of it a little bit too much. Oh well.
So I think, again, we'll let folks feel free if you'd like, if you're like, I'm really into dissecting my owl pellet right now, I really want to finish, I'm almost done, feel free to keep working. If you want to take a break, we are, as a little review, again, we thought it would be fun. We think it's always fun to learn in different ways. So we've spent time doing the polls, the ID challenge, talking with you all, getting your hands on these owl pellets. We thought another fun thing to do would be to take a listen to a music video about some owls and owl pellets. So I'm going to hop back to sharing my screen. Julia will still be working on her owl pellet, but feel free if you would like to watch with us and see if you can remember some of the facts that we talked about are actually going to show up in this animated music video.
Scoop prey and they jowls. Bones at first in the gullet, meat goes to the bowels. Comes out like a bullet after 6 hours. 2 times a day, once at the hunting ground, once at the day roost. Pick past the fur and see the prey they've juiced. Ew. Mice, voles, shrews, hares, skunks, moles, who cares? Me, muskrats, minks, weasels, birds, house cats, snakes, frogs, word! What was once swallowed whole is now called a bolus. Skeletons, perfect preserve. He had a mouse for dinner and a mole for dessert. Look, there's wildfowl, hear its stomach growl, he'll eat a rat. Meat after that, of chuck fur and bone, then back on the prowl. Bring your headlamp and leave home your trowels. Owl pellets, owl pellets, owl pellets. Now we'll yell it. Owl pellets! Owl pellets! Owl pellets! Falcon's got falcon pellets! Eagle's got eagle pellets. We're talking about bird of prey. Learn a word a day. Be good to your mom and stiffen your vertebrae. Owl pellets. Mink, voles, shrews, hares, skunks, moles, who cares? Muskrats, minks, weasels, birds, house cats, snakes, frogs, word!
Awesome. So thank you guys for watching that music video with us. Hopefully you caught a few things in there that we had talked about, like the different kinds of creatures that an owl might have eaten that are in the pellets, the way that it's all kind of perfectly preserved, or just enjoyed the fun music video. Now, we also wanted to finish up by talking a little bit about how you can help owls. So I mentioned at the very beginning that owls are creatures that some of them have actually done really well as people have built towns and cities. There are owls like the barn owl. That was one that we learned in our ID challenge. That barn owl, they call it the barn owl because it loves to build its nest. It loves to live inside of buildings like old barns. They're doing pretty well. But there are some owls that aren't doing quite as well. That as we've built towns and cities, or as we've used different chemicals in the environment, it's been harder for those owls to survive. And so as we learn about owls, it's really important that we also think about ways that we can help them to continue to live in the world. And so one of the biggest things, probably the simplest thing we can do, is something most people wouldn't think about as helping owls. And that is to never throw garbage out on the side of a road. You might think like, wait a second, what does garbage on the side of a road have to do with owls? But it turns out that when we throw garbage, even if it's like food, like an apple core that you think, oh, it'll decompose or something will eat it, that attracts a lot of different creatures like mice or rats. And owls, one of the big causes of death of owls is if they come and they're hunting along the edge of a road, because there's all these mice there, there's all these rats there because there's all this garbage, they really commonly will get hit by cars. So we talk a lot about not littering for a lot of reasons. Keeping our water clean is one of them. It's also really important not to litter, especially on the sides of roads, to protect owls. So when we keep that garbage and say, oh, we're going to find a compost to put it in or find a garbage can to put it in, every time you do that, instead of throwing garbage out, you are helping to protect owls. Another thing is a lot of times around our houses and homes, we do things like we might use poisons to get rid of pests, like if we have a mouse problem. But it turns out that anytime we do that, maybe we put a little poison out and a mouse eats it. Well, we don't want to do that, because if that mouse in turn gets eaten by an owl, the poison that's inside of it goes inside of the owl. And so there are other ways we can do things rather than using poisons to kill things like mice or rats or something that might be around where we live that we don't want. There are all kinds of different traps. So they even make traps that don't hurt the mouse. So you can just trap it and take it somewhere where it's a little better for it to live other than your house. So you can think about that. Maybe if someone you know is having a problem where they're trying to get rid of some mice, ask them and say, hey, are you using poisons or are you going to use a trap? Maybe encourage them to use a trap, and you can tell them all about why. Other ways we can help owls are to leave dead trees around. A lot of people think a dead tree is pointless because it's dead. Who cares anymore? But it turns out that dead trees, these dead standing trees, they're called snags, and they are incredible homes for wildlife. A lot of owls that live in North America actually nest inside of snags, these dead standing trees. And so sometimes when someone needs to hire an arborist to cut down a tree, you can actually hire an arborist to leave the tree standing, just cut down the dangerous part. And owls will sometimes come and actually nest in the holes that woodpeckers make or the holes that some other creature has made. So it can be really exciting too, because you can have maybe an owl come live in your backyard. Some people don't have those snags though, and they still want to see owls, so they build owl boxes. There's quite a few owls that nest in holes in trees. And because there aren't that many holes in trees around, or at least not as many as there used to be, it's helpful to owls when we put up owl boxes. Now, when you build a bird box, the hole that's made has to be just the right size for the owl. So this owl box, the person who made it drilled a hole that was just the right size for that particular owl. So it could come and live in there, lay its eggs, have its babies, and it helped to create a new generation of owls. So easiest thing I can say today is really thinking about not littering on the sides of roads. That's the #1 easiest action we can all take to help owls. But other ways to get involved are also going to be talking to people about going poison free if they're trying to remove pests, leaving snags in place, encouraging dead standing trees to exist. And also, if you really want to help out owls and get involved and build some stuff to help them, think about building an owl box, but also think about where you put it, because an owl has specific habitat needs. So if you just build any old box and put it up, they might not come. So you really have to think about, is this going to be a place where an owl is going to be able to find enough food, enough water? Is this going to be the right kind of food for an owl that it can find in this area? Well, if the answers are yes, that's probably a good place for an owl box. And you guys have all just become know-it owls. I mean, we're truly owl experts now. So we want to thank you so much for learning with us today. And Julia, did you want to add anything for closing?
Yeah, so I just wanted to say thanks to everybody for being here today with us for Owl Pellet Workshop. I had a really fun time taking my pellet apart. I hope that you guys did too. You can, whenever you're done with your pellet, you can do whatever you want with the bones. If you want to just throw them away, that's totally fine. They can just go in a regular old trash can. You don't have to, dig a hole and bury them or anything like that. They can just go right in your trash can. We will be sending out the recording of this webinar. So if you came in late or you had to, if you had to leave early, you're not here anymore, but you'll get the recording of the webinar afterwards. And just thanks for being with us for part of Student Green Congress. This was a really, really fun workshop that I had a blast with. So I hope that you guys did too. So
yeah, you guys
go ahead.
Have a wonderful rest of your Green Congress. Great job. And we hope that you have a great time doing other workshops and also sharing your water quality data. And we also want to just say thank you for the work that you've done. If you've gone and participated in water quality, if you've spent time learning about nature throughout the Nisqually watershed, we really want to extend our thanks to you, because we know that it's people like you that are going to help keep these both wild creatures like owls and wild places like the Nisqually watershed, keep them healthy into the future. So thanks for what you all are doing.
Yeah. All right, everybody, take care. Have a great rest of your day. Thanks for joining us. Bye.